In a series of videos, let us understand the Spring's aspect-oriented programming. But before going to the actual concepts of the Spring aspect-oriented programming, let's see what exactly the problem we have and how can we resolve this using Spring AOP. Let's try to understand what exactly the cross-cutting concern mean. Let's take an example of a food delivery app, and there is one class which takes the order from the customer. So we have three methods over here: placing an order, get the order, and cancel the order. So placing an order, it just creates an order, sends the notification to the restaurant, and returns the order. And in get order, it just returns the order based on the ID. Cancel order deletes the order from the application. If we wanted to add logging for each of these methods, like whenever a method starts, we want to log saying start of the method, and end, we want to add the logging of end information of the method. In all of these methods, over the top of this, we wanted to also add the caching. In a sense, once the order is placed, store the order information in a cache, and before getting an order, we will try to check the cache if we have the order already in the cache, and during the cancellation of the order, we would like to delete the order from the cache. So basically what's happening here is the methods are getting fatter and fatter, and the actual business logic is not as much as the non-business logic code is being added. So if you see here, only these part of the code is the business logic. In a sense, the rest of the code is something we need it, but it's not actual the business logic. So this part of the code which is not related to the business logic is called as cross-cutting concern. And this addition of the cross-cutting concern makes the methods more diluted, and we will not have specific implementation, but rather a mixture of both the business logic and the cross-cutting concern information. Like logging and caching, we have several different kinds of cross-cutting concerns. For example, security, wherein we will have the authentication and authorization, and also the XSS attack or CSRF attack, all these kind of handling. Nowadays, we have the interceptors in most of the frameworks to handle this, and caching, as we saw, transaction management. So whenever we have some methods which needs the transaction safe, then we need the transaction management. This is also being handled in most of the frameworks internally. So basically, these are all handled using the interceptors. And the timer, if you want to calculate the time of execution of a specific method, logging, and exception. And these are some of the cross-cutting concerns, and we have several others as well. Now, let's try to separate the cross-cutting concern from our actual business logic. Here, our class is the original class, which do not contain any of the cross-cutting concern implementation. And now in the Spring AOP, what do? Is we separate cross-cutting concern implementation in a specific class. For example, here customer cross-cutting concern class contains the implementation of logging, caching, and exception. So basically what we did is we did a modularization of the cross-cutting concern implementation into a single class. So this modularization or the class is called an aspect in Spring AOP. And it's not necessary to have only a single class in the whole application. You can have several classes, and which represents several aspects of the Spring AOP. Let's try to understand the Spring AOP concepts with an example. Let's say we want to place an order, and after placing an order, a caching should take place. So basically, once the order is placed, there is a cache within this cross-cutting concern class, and that class has the implementation of caching that stores the information of the order once the place order method is completed. In essence, after returning from the place order method, the implementation of caching should execute. And this implementation of caching is called an advice. So basically the method which implements the caching within the aspect is called an advice. Here in this specific example, we see the after returning advice that is being executed. Similarly, we have several different kind of advices. So before, after returning. So we'll see these in more detail in our coming videos. For now, you can see that there are several different kind of advices. And we see that this specific advice is executed after completing the order, place order method. So let's call this class as business logic class, and this method is a business logic. After the business logic execution, the advice has been executed. So basically what we are doing, we are trying to join this method execution with the advice execution after. And hence this place is called a join point. Now it can be possible that the advice be executed on more than one business logic method. Here in our example, we have place order. There could be a case where there is another business logic method which executes this caching, and we need the information of that join point as well. So basically we need a way for the advice to know that these are all the join points, and that can be known by the point cut. So we will have the point cut expression or the information on the advice that gives an idea about the join points for this specific advice. And the object of the class which contains the business logic is called as the target object. And to make sure this process takes place, this target object is wrapped around a proxy object. We'll see that in a while. So what happens in a proxy, Spring AOP proxy? We'll take the same example as before. After returning, so there is some method which is calling place order method of the customer order. What Spring AOP does is it creates a proxy object, customer order proxy, and the request goes to this customer order proxy. Now the customer order proxy checks whether the business logic method has to be executed before or the advice needs to be executed. In our case, first business logic gets executed. So place and order method is called. Once this is completed successfully, the cache order method or the advice will be called by the customer order proxy. And once this is completed, the response is returned back to the calling method. Now that we have seen the concepts, let us summarize them. There is something called as aspect, which is nothing but the modularization of the cross-cutting concerns into a single place. And the advice is the actual implementation of that cross-cutting concern. The join point is the point where the execution of the advice joins the business logic, as we have seen in our example. And the point cut is a kind of expression that helps the advice to join several business logic implementations. And the target object is the object of the class where the business logic is implemented. And the proxy is an object that is wrapped around the target object. So now we have high level of understanding on various concepts of the Spring AOP. Let's see this with an example in our next video. Thanks for watching.